Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Stephanie Jacobs, and I am an area rep for SC for Ed. Today, I am talking with Michael McCord, who is a candidate for District 5 for the South Carolina Senate. And I want to thank you for agreeing to do the interview with us. And also, thank you for taking time to speak with our audience and share your platform. So if you will take a couple of minutes and introduce yourself and your platform, and then I'll ask you the questions.
Okay. Well, thanks again for having this, and I do encourage my Republican opponents to participate in this as well. But my name is Michael McCord. Once again, I am a father, a husband, a small business owner, and a Christian, and I'm a friend of public education. I have a young son that just started kindergarten this year, so I realize the significance of bettering our education system now. The medically adequate approach that South Carolina's had for the past 25 years, this is not cutting it. Under Republican leadership, we're 44th, I believe, last I checked, in education. So this is not cutting it. And, that's one of my biggest issues in education of why I'm running. We want to broaden broadband. So when we do have the e-learning situations, no one's having to go to churches. We're not having to route buses to rural areas. Broadband needs to be a public utility, and we need to be able to have access for all of that. Teacher pay, I've had friends that have left the state to move to Georgia because Georgia has one of the highest in the Southeast, and South Carolina unfortunately does not. So it's ridiculous that our teachers should be treated like doctors. They're heroes for our children.
All right, great intro there. And I think you kind of touched on some of the questions that I'm going to be asking you. So as I ask those questions, if you just want to elaborate a little bit more, please feel free to. So the first question, what is your opinion of the state of public education in South Carolina today?
I think we're in trouble, to be so to speak. I am originally from Abbeville, South Carolina, which was part of the corridor shame. So I am very familiar with the education troubles. I went to South Carolina public education my entire life. I've got friends that teach in Title I schools. I've talked to them about their struggles. I've got friends that teach in wealthy districts. We can't buy our way out of this with money. And it's not our teachers' fault because we have the top class teachers. They don't have the resources or the money to provide for our students, and we need to change that. I don't think the priorities are in order in Columbia. I think education should be number one priority.
Thank you for that. The second question, if elected, what would be the first step you would take to improve public education?
Well, I think we need to pay our teachers more. So I would put a bill forth on the bill that the starting pay of teachers in South Carolina would be $42,000 with yearly reviews and raises. That would be my number one priority. Number two, I would like to change how rural schools are funded. I don't think property taxes should be the majority of where our funding is coming. I think there are other avenues of revenue we have not looked at yet. I would like to do public-private sponsorships with private businesses to do intern programs for machinists, plumbers, electricians, BMW, Boeing, whatever part of the state you're in, partner with private businesses to offer more apprenticeship programs, because I think we've failed two generations of students by saying everyone should go to college. Now we need plumbers, we need electricians, we need these trade jobs that pay really well. And I think we can start students off in high school in a vocational program, and then when they get out, if they do choose so, they'll have a job making $15, $20 an hour and a stable livelihood. When I was in school in Abbeville, we had a vocational program that had nursing and automotive and cosmetology, and a lot of those kids would work with different local businesses, and they would come out of high school with a good paying job. So I think we should bring that back as well.
All right, thank you for that. I actually work with elementary students, but I've had a chance to go to some of our high schools and see some of the vocational programs, and just have been amazed at some of the progress that has been made in those careers, from, maybe a few years ago. These are very important careers that really serve to be the backbone of, not just our state, but our country. So I really like where you're headed with that. All right, question 3. If elected, what specific steps would you take to address the funding of public education?
First, we need to stop the voucher program and public funds being used for private school. If we can't shore up our funding for public schools, why are we, spending money we don't have, basically? So I would cut that out immediately. I would appeal to the federal government for more assistance. And there are other revenue sources we have not looked at, like potentially legalizing marijuana and using those funds to fund public education. Colorado has done something similar to that with their tax revenue windfalls from that, and their public education is top notch in the nation. Also, when we get a windfall like we did from the lottery, I think it was last year, why in the world do we send citizens of South Carolina a $50 check when that money could have went straight to public education? And we're operating in a surplus. We're not a broke state. We're not an in-debt state. The money is there. The priorities are not. And like I said, when I get to the Senate, my number one priority is to be a friend of education. We've got, for my son's future and my grandkids' future, when I do have some, hopefully, we've got to change the way we're operating. South Carolina used to be top-notch education. We used to be number one in almost everything. Now we're not. And I don't know why education is not an issue. And for my current representative, which is the main reason why I was running, I've spoken to many school board members, Republicans and Democrats alike. Education just doesn't seem to be a priority in Columbia, and it's just mind-boggling.
And that's one of the things before we got into the COVID pandemic situation that SC for Ed was really looking at, the fact that our state had a surplus, and yet education was not being fully funded. And the offer that was even on the table at the time was only $11, and it could have been fully funded. And, there was really not a legitimate reason why that could not happen for us. So
it's a failure of leadership, pure and simple. I mean, that's what it boils down to. Education has to be a priority for everyone.
Yes.
And I think it's a unifying message for Republican, Democrats, Libertarian individuals, Black, white, Asian, Hispanic. I think education and our kids' future is a unifying message.
Yes.
All parties, all creeds, all income levels. We all want better for our children.
Exactly. It's definitely something that affects all of us. All right. Question number 4, our final question. In your opinion, what would a successful accountability system for education in South Carolina look like?
Well, I'm not a fan of standardized testing. I can remember being, I'm going to age myself a little bit, but I can remember being in Westwood Elementary in Abbeville, South Carolina, taking the PAC test, and how stressful that was.
Yes.
And I think we should give more accountability and more credit to our teachers, our educators. I think we can gauge the performance of our students a lot more so than a test. Now, I'm not saying eliminate standardized testing completely, because it does give us some decent data, but I think we should more rely on the educator's perspective, because they can tell me more one-on-one, hey, your son's reading scores really improved, but he's lagging in math some. So then I can focus more as a parent in the home on some of that stuff, and we can come up with a plan together. I think we should have individual plans for the students, and the educators should have more responsibility to gauge that progress, because that's what y'all went to school for. That is y'all's profession. And some students don't test well. They can be the smartest in the class, but they get a piece of paper in front of them and they blank out. So I don't think the standardized test is the way to go. I think we should allow individual school districts to come up with a platform that they gauge performance by, and then we can review that at the state, and then still do the standardized test, but I don't think the standardized test should carry all the weight in that matter.
Okay. Well, we are at the end of our interview. Just kind of thinking back on the questions that were asked in your platform, is there anything else that you would like to add that maybe our voters would need to hear, or something that, again, relates to education in your platform?
Well, I am an open book. I'm going to start doing a web series with teachers, retired teachers, and teachers have left the profession. I have a friend that has a master's in education, and she told me, Michael, I was only making $40,000 a year when I left to become a realtor. That's unacceptable.
Mm-hmm.
We've got, people, plumbers, electricians, which is an honorable profession, but they're making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year, but we're paying our educators scrap.
Mm-hmm.
It's unacceptable. And when I get to Columbia, I'm going to raise some cane until we get some stuff done.
Sounds like a plan. Well, thank you again for taking time to meet with us and answer some questions. And I'm going to stop the recording now.
Okay.